That is our signal to go. I think we're all good to go. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. It's really great to have you all. We're looking forward to getting some super useful advice for the Financial Times graduate programme. And we've got Adele Jones with us, who's the Editorial Early Careers and Development Manager. And then we've got Scheherazade Daneshkhu, who is the Director of Editorial Talent at the FT. So we've got loads of great questions, but do feel free to pop any questions you do have while we're going. But if we start, just quite broad, but could you tell us a little bit about the scheme? What is the role on offer? Where is it based? And how much will you be paid?
Oh, the classics. Hi, thank you everyone for joining. So this is our Paul McClean graduate trainee programme. It is to join the FT's headquarters here in London. So we're just opposite St Paul's, which you can't see from here, but we've got a lovely view of it and a wonderful rooftop. It's to join us as a graduate trainee reporter. You would join us at so we'll go with the big figures first. So you join us at £30,000 in your first year, increasing to 34,000 in your second year. The programme itself is 2 years, extended into 3 years. So you join us, have 7 weeks intensive training here in London, and then you go on to 4 6-month rotations. One of those is always on the markets desk. One of them tends to be an industry beat. One of them is always a foreign posting as well, which is quite exciting, and we're really pleased to be able to offer that again. And then the fourth one is a discussion that you and Scheherazade would have about how your future is going and what your next placement would be. The idea then is in your third year, you would apply for one of our jobs that you think looks quite exciting. You'd have discussions about whether it can be made into a trainee role. So you just have that one final year, a little bit of guidance here at the FT. So what we're looking for are aspiring journalists, news reporters is what we're really looking for, with an interest in finance, business, politics.
Amazing. I think that leads to this question quite well. What are the 3 most important attributes for a reporter?
Hi, should I take that one?
Yes, please.
What we're looking for are people who are excited by news and who want to be reporters as opposed to sort of opinion writers or columnists. We're looking for people who are curious about the world, who want to join an international news organization like ours. Who obviously, should be able to write reasonably well. And we're also looking for some other skills as well, like data skills or languages are all very useful as well in an international organization.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And this attributes, what the main skills you're looking for? I suppose that's sort of outside journalism as well. Notice someone had said non-journalistic attributes, so I suppose that's sort of bringing it from any experience.
Well, I would say curiosity is quite an important one, actually, and we want people who are looking for the truth. We want truth seekers. That's incredibly important. Trust in news is very important. People pay to read the Financial Times. They pay to take out a subscription, and we our mandate is to give them top quality original news. You won't get I think those are the main attributes, really, and having an open mind. Being able to listen to different points of view, but also distill what you think is the essence of the argument.
Absolutely. And so those are the great things we're looking for. But also, what in your past experience, have you seen any common pitfalls in applications that you would sort of say avoid going into the application?
One of Shara's biggest pitfalls is when people write an opinion piece instead of a news article. It has to. The whole idea is you're coming to us as a news reporter. So at the moment, it's great to have opinions, but we've got plenty of people who can write those. But yeah, we're looking for news reporters. So try to include quotes, and that's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a field that is so competitive, journalism obviously so competitive, do you have any advice for really differentiating yourself in the application process?
Oh, great cover letter. We love a cover letter, don't we, Shari?
Yes, yes. The cover letter is important. The article is important. So we do put quite a lot of weighting on the news article, but the cover letter, how it's written, I would say both those things are the most important, and then the CV, just so that we know what you've been doing. But the question is about how to differentiate yourself. I mean, I think the thing to do would be to show maybe some interests that are specific, specifically your interests. Maybe you've set up, maybe you set up a blog, maybe you did something at university, ran various things, something that can show kind of that sort of initiative that would be interesting. There was someone who had set up a blog on sort of financial advice for women. There were, we've had things that sort of catch our eye. So something that could catch our eye. So I wouldn't advise you to do anything that's not, that's just going to be kind of out there and weird. No, I would just go for something that's true to you. It's amazing how when you read these applications, you do get a very good sense of someone's own integrity and initiatives. So my advice would be, don't pretend to be someone else, be yourself, but don't underestimate some of the stuff that you've done, because it may well be of interest to us.
Yeah, I guess like showing you've pursued things that you're interested in off your own back. And it's always, I think maybe some people think with job applications that you have to sort of take all the human interests out, but I suppose that's showing that you don't necessarily. And again, sorry if this is a little bit repetitive, but what is the difference in your opinion between a good application and maybe one that's absolutely outstanding? I feel like that's quite a difficult question.
Yeah.
The thing is, we get a lot of applications. So we get about 500. In some years, it's gone up to 600 or 700. So what you're doing is that, we get a lot of good applications.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that we know that we turn down a lot of really good people, and that's always a source of anguish to me, actually. So I guess an outstanding application. Again, it would be very much along the same lines that I've said. It's something to do with the story. The story comes across really well. The letter comes across as someone who is genuinely interested in journalism and in reporting. Mm-hmm. That's what we really want, someone who genuinely wants to be a journalist, particularly a reporter, and somebody who wants to have a long-term career with the FT. Now, you don't need to have demonstrated business interest. I didn't have, I hadn't done any business journalism when I joined the FT as a reporter. And I've had a career here for 28 years in writing different sorts of subjects. So you don't have to have that, but you need to show that that's something that you would be potentially interested in. And having a range of other skills. I've already mentioned data and languages are always good. But having said that, we have taken people with no data skills and with no language skills, but because we thought that they look like they really are going to be a sort of go-getting reporter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adele, do you have anything to add to that?
I guess also bring what you can bring to us as well. So if you are talking from a background that perhaps we don't have that much of represented here at the FT, or you're taking a slightly different view on something, maybe it's a generational view on something which is slightly different. It could be using a female voice for something. Those kind of things are all really, really important as well. So talking about who you are and what you can bring from your background as well, I think can be hugely, hugely important. And often can give us a little bit of insight as to why you've chosen to write about that particular topic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's some stellar advice. And I know we talked about this a little bit. You said you didn't necessarily have business experience before, but I think there are some people who are concerned about how much newsroom experience they might already have. So we've had a question from Miriam. What are the prospects of getting accepted if you have minimal newsroom experience?
Well, we do want some newsroom experience, yeah. So typically, I mean, sometimes we have taken people who've just graduated, but they will have done some student journalism. They don't have to be in a newsroom, but they need to have, maybe I should correct myself, but they need to have done journalism because, you know, if you haven't done any student journalism or any journalism after that, it doesn't give us much to go on in terms of, you know, when we're comparing that application with other people's applications. So I would say that you don't need to have been employed by another news organization, certainly not. But if you can demonstrate interest, like you've done internships or you've spent some time in other newsrooms, that would be really good, as well as I say, newsroom journalism, some local journalism, all of that.
Absolutely, that's really useful to know, because I think people who ask me these questions have got considerable student newsroom experience, but maybe don't. There's that classic thing where they don't count that as a.
Oh no, we love student journalism. It's a great way of trying out different roles, pushing yourself to the limits, trying, you know, editing your own work and bits and pieces like that. So yeah, we're big fans.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because I think that was quite a big misconception between people. They don't feel like they're doing real journalism, but they know, you know, it absolutely is, isn't it? If you're finding stories, you're doing that. And we've got a question in the chat actually that has come up now. So could we, we're not going to go into this too much because they're more sort of easy answers, but someone has a question about visas. So would you be able to point them in the right direction to sort of ask about that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got a specific query, so we do ask at the point of application, we're actually at the point of receiving your contract, which will be in the summer of 2024. You would need to have the right to work in the UK already for a minimum of 3 years. That's because the programme itself is up to 3 years. But yeah, if you've got any specific questions about your own personal eligibility, if you email graduate.journalist@ft.com, I'll come back to you.
That's amazing. And we've had a couple of people ask sort of what counts as a recent graduate, because I know that some people aren't sure with age or whatever. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? What counts as
I guess you kind of, if you were looking at your own CV and your own experience and what you would consider, if you see yourself as a recent graduate, so it doesn't have to be, I think I have a few people who've emailed me to say, oh, you know, I graduated in 2022. Absolutely, that's absolutely fine to us. That is recent. Even going back, I'd say 3-4 years at a push, maybe. And obviously we appreciate that COVID didn't allow for a lot of people to gain a lot of experience. People may have halted their education and just not been able to. So we are, you know, we have taken that into consideration this year as well. But yeah, just have a think about, if you were to employ yourself, would you consider yourself a recent graduate?
Because I think this person said they've worked at for a little while after graduating at a trade magazine, for example. Would that be okay?
Lovely. That
Lovely.
sounds
Perfect. Very good. Yep. Very good. We like trade magazines as well.
Brilliant. There you go then. And we have had someone ask from Florence and Cabby, respectively, have asked, do you need an NCTJ or an economics degree?
No, listen, we love the NCTJ, but no, you don't need one to apply for our graduate training programme, nor do you need an economics degree. I think a few people do worry about that. No, as long as Shari said before, you can show and that you really are passionate about being a journalist, that you've tried it out, that you've done student journalism. We don't mind necessarily what your degree is in.
And obviously we've already touched on you do need to demonstrate that journalism experience, but someone has also asked how to best leverage experience outside of journalism. So I assume that means they have experiences outside of journalism and they want to talk about that in their application. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
I guess that's a great thing to pop in your cover letter if it's something that's really important to you, that you want to get across and that you think, you know, would boost your application, then the cover letter is a great point to add that. Also, we don't mind things. It can be quite nice if you've written perhaps a piece which might not necessarily be a huge topic, but there's something quite personal and interesting to you, and you want to link that in your cover letter as well, if that's a good way of sharing what you'd like to get across.
I mean, if it's sort of, you know, a life experience that you want to, you know, that you want to draw our attention to, then you definitely should. And it could be a point of differentiation from other people. If it was traveling somewhere, working in the voluntary sector somewhere, which, you know, taught you things about other people or about other people's lives or how you view the world, those are definitely valuable experiences to talk about. We're not looking for some kind of cookie cutter application or a very narrow application. So do get your personality across as best you can. And the letter is, as Adele says, the best place to do that.
Absolutely. And do you have sort of any, I know you've talked about the cover letter a lot and how that's, I mean, I think maybe sometimes think the CV is more important, but do you have an overarching piece of advice or sort of tips about executing a cover letter? I mean, that structure or length, I know some people get.
Yeah, try and keep it to a page. Similar with CV as well, if you can keep that to a page, because essentially, especially for your CV, that's a point of reference, really. We don't need too much detail on there. But yeah, cover letter, if you can keep it to a page, but it's a really nice way of us to see the difference in your writing when you're writing about yourself and then when you're writing your article as well. So it gives us a little bit of insight into who you are. I think there's a question I get asked quite a lot is who should you address your cover letter to as well. I think just the standard Paul McClean graduate trainee panel is a nice way to go rather than hunting around and trying to find, you know, core members to address that to.
Absolutely, I think that'd be really useful. Yeah. And we've had a follow-up question from Instagram about the economics degree question. Someone asked, would they be necessarily at a disadvantage having done mainly arts and culture journalism rather than news reporting?
Well, not necessarily, but I mean, you need to have an interest in business journalism. So actually, it's funny to be asked that question because one trainee that we did take did have a bit of a background in cultural journalism. But what it told them was that sometimes cultural assets can be regarded as a sort of investment, and this is the sort of takeaway they had got from it, which you know, which was of interest to us. But if you want to be an arts journalist, then maybe this isn't the scheme for you. We are looking for people who will become corporate reporters, write about companies, write about business, write about economics, and write about, you know, as foreign correspondents, you would be covering all those things. As well as being, you know, a foreign correspondent and covering the politics or the economy of a place. But if that's the only journalism you have, and you really want to be a business journalism, then that shouldn't hold you back, as long as you can convey that to us in your letter and in your choice of story.
Absolutely.
But if you decide that it's not for you and that you do want to be an arts journalist, we've got internships that you can apply for that more for the arts.
Yeah, that's really useful to know. And we've got a question from Matilda about sort of once, if you've been successful on the scheme, to what extent can applicants choose the areas they focus on when they work at the FT? So I assume that means during the scheme.
Yeah, the desks that you're going to be put on. Well, it's always done in discussion with me, and I have to balance various things, which is, you know, there are other trainees. So, for example, we've got 2 trainees from last year and the previous year, and they're going through different desks. So one thing is just a practical question of which desks are available. But as Adele said, there are normally typical desks like breaking news or markets or one of the sectors writing about companies, normally consumer or media. And then there's the overseas posting. There's also asset management as well. That's also a good desk. So if someone's got a really great interest in something and is desperate to join one desk for one of the rotations, I mean, you know, we can definitely talk about that. But the point of the scheme is to give the person a broad experience by being in 4 different areas in order to set them up well for their future career.
The idea, so they do have the 7 weeks intensive training right at the beginning, so to get yourself ready to go onto those desks as well. So, you know, you might not have ever even seen, you know, market stats and data before. We go through that with you, so you're not going to it completely cold and dry. And likewise, you would have met all of the senior editors who head up all of those desks as well. So if you are then thrown straight into breaking news, you will have met Oliver, you will have seen how the team works as well. So, you know, it's building upon the training you would have had.
Brilliant. And we've spoken a little bit about wanting to pursue that, you know, long-term career with the FT. Someone has asked what future opportunities might there be post-training, so whether that's in the past with anybody on the scheme.
Oh, wow, Shari, where do we begin with this? A lot of our grads are still here in the newsroom in multiple different roles. In fact, if you were to look around the newsroom today, I think we've got our news editor, our world news editor, and our UK news editor are all former grads. We've got people abroad who have been former grads, columnists who are former grads, arts desk writers here who are former grads. So yeah, so really broad, and I think that's something which is quite important as well. At some places you may join only in one role, whereas here we're very open that you can carve out that career that you want.
Yeah, so I mean, it depends sort of on what job comes up as you get to the end of your 2nd year. So it could be covering leisure companies, for example, or it could be actually, I mean, climate is also a possibility.
Yeah, that's been, yeah.
Yeah, so we've had, it just depends on the job that comes up at that moment. Asset management is another one, as I mentioned. I mean, the way we structure a career for reporters and editors here is that typically you do a job for about 4 years on average, and then we have an internal application process because everyone's moving jobs. So jobs will come up that you want to do. I mean, the jobs I've done here have been, I've been leisure industries correspondent, I've been economics correspondent, I've been to a foreign correspondent not very far away in Paris, in the Paris bureau. I've been consumer industries editor, and I've done each one of these jobs. I think I've skipped 1 or 2 for about, yeah, typically in my case, about 5 years or so. And I think that's one reason why people tend to stay at the FT for quite a long time. Maybe not as long as me, but because you can have a career here. And each person's career is unique because the path they take is going to be different from the other person's path. And you build up on what you learned in your previous job. So every time you're bringing something new to the new job as well. And that's what makes it interesting. And also, you know, you can go into editing. You could be an editor for a while and then go back into reporting. And now we have visual storytelling, we have data journalism, we have audience engagements, we have video. So there are all sorts of sections that if you're interested and have the skills that you could apply for.
Absolutely. So lots of opportunities. And if it's all right, we will go a little bit onto the article and what you were looking for this, because we've had quite a few questions about this. Firstly, from Madeline, they ask, how important are the interviews?
Sorry, how important are the
interviews?
Oh, is it to have quotes in the article?
Yes,
article or
yeah, the article, yeah.
Okay, well, I think this question is probably prompted by the fact that this year we've asked for, we want, if someone's interviewed, to be able to see that to see their recordings, or even to be able to get in touch with the person they interviewed. I think, you know, interviews are very important to an article, unless it's well, even with a piece of data journalism, you'd want to talk to someone about it. So for news reporting, interviewing people is quite sort of a fundamental part of it, really.
So you want that, yeah. And then we've also heard from Jethro, who says, can you include multimedia, or do you just want it to be text?
Oh, look, if you want to pop a graph in there and to back up some stats or some data, you've got that. That's lovely. I wouldn't go with video. This, you know, this is going to be all viewed, you know, online. So yeah, but if you want to pop in a graph and some data to show that, lovely, really nice.
Brilliant. And then we've also had some questions that relate to people, just general advice about how to secure interviews when the article's not going to be published. I know this is a conundrum I faced on my own today as well, doing that. So I don't know, if you have any tips for that.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'm always surprised actually that people manage it. So I know it's not easy. It depends on the sort of story that you're doing. I mean, if you're doing a story about something that's local, it's probably not too difficult, you know, to get shopkeepers to talk to you, to get your local MP even a quote from them, or the local council. So, you know, it would be harder to get a quote from the Chancellor of the Exchequer, obviously. So, yeah, it does depend. Or maybe an institute would also speak to you, or a consultancy. I mean, definitely you need to be upfront with them and say that, you know, the article won't necessarily be published. I mean, it won't be published. And I suppose it might be published, but yeah, I guess it depends on probably the subject that you choose.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just important to be transparent, and you know, there are people out there that do want to help, don't they? And they you know,
Yeah.
you're telling people's story, and you're still doing that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're writing about the labour market, you know, companies, recruitment companies or something, will probably talk to you. Yeah, and you're right. People want to be helpful, by and large.
And then also had someone ask, Megan has said, can you remember any good examples that you read last year?
Ooh, that's a good one. I do remember one of our graduate trainees wrote a story about umbrellas, how the Japanese love umbrellas, and what happens to all this plastic when they throw away their umbrellas, which I thought was just a lovely story, because she had just been on holiday in Japan, and it was kind of illustrating the curiosity point, if you like. She noticed that as soon as there's a little speck of rain, apparently, Japanese people get out their umbrellas, and they have these see-through umbrellas. But then, you know, she did talk to various organizations about waste and what happens to these umbrellas afterwards. So that struck me.
Well, that sounds so interesting. I'd like to read that. And then we've also had a question from Instagram from Tala. Does the story need to be finance related?
It doesn't need to be finance related, no. I mean, we try and pitch it wide. So we say something of interest to an FT reader, which in itself is quite broad. So it's really a news story that you would expect to see in the FT. Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be about finance. As I say, I mean, Japanese umbrellas wasn't about finance.
Just, yeah, thinking about the reader.
Yeah.
And then we'll move on from the article, unless we have any more questions they might pop up, we can return to them. But in terms of the interview stage, as in you are interviewing this time, not your interviewee, how would you say it would be best to stand out in an interview?
Well, I mean, when you get, if you get to interview stage, you've already done phenomenally well. So I would just say, you know, take a deep breath. I know these interviews can be really nerve-wracking, and I remember the series of interviews I had when I joined the FT. But, you know, try and relax and be yourself, and explain, you know, how you got the idea for the story, what you did for it, why you want to be a reporter, why you want to be at the FT. I think just really being genuine is the most important thing. You don't need to try and impress with, you know, in a way that then doesn't come across maybe as genuine. I think so. That would be my best advice. Really, be relaxed, be yourself. Because if this is really what you want to do, it will just show itself. It will just come out.
Do you agree with that, Adele? Have you got any?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also remember the panel aren't there to you know, make you slip up. They want to hear from you. They're curious about you as well. So yeah, don't be nervous of them. They're, you know, we're looking for, you know, people who are going to come in here and work alongside them as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're bound to be nervous, but as Adele says, we're not there to trip you up or to ask you trick questions. So, you know, so everything we do ask is genuine, and it is a really, really difficult choice to make, really hard, because there are so many talented people, and having to choose just a few is really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. And Holly has asked, what are the next steps if you get through the first round? So between, I suppose, the initial application and then that interview process.
It's quite a long process. It does take a good few months. So most, first of all, get your application in by the 13th of January. That would be great. We then do an initial read, and you will then find out. You will find out each stage whether you've made it. So get you the first stage you make it to is the long list. So that's where we've read all of the applications, and then we've got it down to usually about 100 applicants who we make onto our long list. The panel then as a whole read all of those applications again, and then from that they will pick a group that they want to discuss more, and you find out whether you've made it to that stage, and then you get to the interview stage as well. So at each point you're told, but it does take a good few months as well, because if you think we're reading hundreds of applications here, so you will be told at each point whether you've made to the next stage or not as well. So it's not like you'll be left hanging at every stage.
Yeah, but it's a good 2 months, is it, Adele, between admitting the deadline and
finding out if you're on the long list.
Yes.
But we try the interviews, and we try and do late March, early April. So that's the first stage of interviews. Brilliant. Just to give you an idea of the timeline.
And then we have also had another quite broad question, but you know, important, from Lorna on Instagram. I guess just a few do's and don'ts for the application generally. We spoke a little bit about pitfalls you've seen, but yeah, if you have any that just, I guess, come to mind straight away.
Typos. Read, reread, triple read your application. Even ask a friend to read over it as well. Maybe just, you know, cast her over to make sure you've not made a glaringly awful typo somewhere. Knowing the difference that we're the Financial Times and not the Times is also quite a nice one too.
And we, going back to the article, we did have another question about that come through. Do you have any sort of general advice for that, finding ideas and finding stories for people?
Yeah, I mean, we did once think about trying to sort of narrow it, but actually the joy for us is reading all these different types of articles. I mean, I've just thought about another one, which was about Argentina and how farmers, as a hedge against inflation, so this one, it was a bit financial, but they were monetizing their cows into sort of Bitcoin, and they were called Bit Cow. And this is something that is going on there. It was fascinating to read about that. So the article, I mean, I would say be a little bit ambitious. I mean, it's very narrow, or just about like property prices in a small place. It sort of might not be so interesting. Yeah, so try and be a bit ambitious, but it should be something that's really caught your eye and that you think is interesting, and that you want to explain and explore and explain to us. And data is also good. I mean, we've had very good ones that have come out of data with charts and graphs. But as I say, it doesn't have to be that. So. Yeah, I hope the umbrella and Argentinian farmers example something.
Yeah, I guess it shows, yeah, it's always good to be a little bit niche and think outside the box, because it's certainly things that you click on a homepage or on paper. Yeah, definitely. And then we do have two more questions that have just come through about that on the Instagram. Max has asked, how many people do you need to speak to? Is there an amount that you look ideally, the case study sources, whatever?
No, but whatever the article needs, really. It's not a very long article. It's 500 words. So whatever, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be able to quote that many people in that length anyway. Yeah, so you don't have to stuff it full of people and quotes.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Natasha wants to know if you have to provide sources where people, I'm not sure if that's the title there. If you have to provide sources where people agreed, okay, there we go. If you have to provide sources where people agree to speak on background only, so I'm not sure if that's, I guess, research that isn't exactly quoted.
Well, I mean, at the FT, we do run stories where people are speaking on background. But I mean, normally that's kind of a journalistic necessity in order to get that story out. Where you have a choice, and you can, you can choose the subject, and you want to demonstrate, the point of these stories is you want to demonstrate that how to write a news story, and that you've got and you know how to research it, basically. So I wouldn't go for people who are going to speak on background. Then I would try and find people who do agree to be quoted. Otherwise, as I say, of necessity, when you're doing news as a reporter in a news organisation, yes, we sometimes have to do that because we've got to get the story out, and we're convinced of that this is important. But when you're choosing it for the application, I think I would just choose a different person or a different story in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, you have only got 500 words, and it's relatively short. Just for those on the live, this is sort of like a 5-minute warning. If you do have any more questions, we've got about 5 minutes left. So we've sort of covered most of the questions we had in advance. Someone has put your classic, if you had to sort of say, one piece of golden advice, what would it be? Applying.
Just one piece of golden advice. Yeah, I mean, I would really reiterate Adele's point on the typos and grammar, because if we see mistakes in a letter or a story, those sorts of mistakes, we'll probably rule it out pretty much immediately, because it means that then people might make mistakes when they're a reporter, which we don't want. So I think that would be my golden. But it's a bit of a negative, isn't it? Because it's so.
No, I suppose it shows you that not doing it like the night before and having that time, because like you say, you're hopefully going to have a family member or a friend who will read it for you, and that it doesn't take that long, I suppose. But something that could be a really big red flag on an otherwise good application.
So, yeah, the spelling of people's names, or especially if you're spelling somebody that everyone knows, make sure that their name is spelled correctly. So.
Absolutely. And what about you, Adele? What would you say would be your
I mean, I guess I can go back to my favourite, which is the cover letter. I guess it's just you really use that as a chance to sell yourself and tell us about you. You know, rather than it just being a relishing an opportunity and that kind of thing. Just use that opportunity to tell us and what you'd like to do with your career at the FT. I always find that bit quite nice as well. If you tell us a little bit about why you've chosen us, it's quite nice.
And why we should choose you. You know what you can bring to us, and we are, as Adele said before, we're also looking for people with a broad range of experience, people who are underrepresented in the industry. So, do make a point of that if that's part of your application. That would also differentiate you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess using the things for different your CV to show sort of why it should be you and why you want to work at the FT. Your CV for noting experience and more, like you say, use the cover letter for more broader explanations, and then obviously the article show the news writing side of it. Yeah, that is. Unless we have any more questions. Yeah, actually, this is very important. Before we go, if you can just sort of explain where you can find out more.
Yes.
And then I'll let you know.
Fantastic. Yes, if you could visit www.ft.com/graduates, that would take you to our nice homepage, and you can learn a little bit more about why it's called Paul McClean and Graduate Trainee Programme there as well, should you so wish. And if you scroll to the bottom, it's got all of the outline and the apply here button as well, which takes you to the application site. So don't forget on the application page to complete it and attach your CV, cover letter, and your article.
And then we have also got a really useful guide on journal resources along with the job ad, which sort of takes you to the FT. So that, it's got tips of applying that you can understand. So that's good.
And we do have two videos that two of our recent still current trainees have done. Adele, where can those be seen?
Yeah, on our socials. Hannah, I can share that with you and Jem to promote. Ian Johnston and Akila Quino did a video for us the other week about why they applied and what they've been doing. So I will share that with you, Hannah and Jem.
That'd be really useful. Yeah, so everyone you can look up for that on our socials, share that. That'll be really useful. And this has been incredibly useful. So thank you both so much for your time. I'm sure.
But any further questions, do email that email address I mentioned earlier, graduate.journalist@ft.com, because that will take you straight there. So I know that's a graduate related question, and I will try and help you as much as I can.
Yeah, and also feel free to drop us a message if they are, if you're struggling to find anything, we can always point you in the right direction. So that's brilliant. Thank you both so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Hannah.
No problem.
We're looking forward